go. Okay. Hi, everybody. I don't know if you know me or don't know me. Most of you probably do know who I am anyway. Come on, sit down, sit down, sit down. So this was actually Dave's idea, doing this. Thanks for the memories. And I guess the idea was if you guys wanted to talk about Greg, if you had questions about Greg's life, that we would answer them. Everybody up here had something to do with Greg's life that was important. Bob Budiansky, brilliant genius in the comic industry. Bob was the catalyst behind the Masterpieces trading card set. 1994, editor, art director, pain in the ass. Sorry. Well, listen, I used to say things like I'd send in a sketch that Greg did, and he'd say, no, I think the breasts are a little too big. And I'd say, but the crotch on Spider-Man is not too big. I don't get it. We have a double standard going on here, Okay. So that's Bob. Wheezy, Walter, geniuses, absolute geniuses, dear friends.
Introduction for you.
Yeah, we're just
I don't know. Did we meet before Superman? I can't remember if we did or we didn't.
I think probably that Superman story.
Yeah. So the last god of Krypton.
Yep.
That Walter wrote, and they painted, and I didn't want them to do that. I said, you're going to spend 8 months of your life painting a book that DC is not going to promote correctly, and I was right. But what we got out of that was Walter and Wheezy. So that was worth it. It was fine. That was worth it because we adore them. Greg adores them. Tom I don't think Tom ever actually worked with Greg on a project. Did you?
he did the cover for Spectre.
Oh, God. Jesus. Yes.
In your hallway, I wanted it.
Oh, God. Yes. He loved that. Oh, I love that painting. You can't have it. Sorry.
I knew where that was going.
That ain't going nowhere. Okay. You can come and visit anytime you want. And Michael Uslan. Now, Michael Uslan, dear, dear, dear friend, and the executive producer of the Batman movies, all of them.
Oh, cool.
And he came here today because I asked him to. And so anybody has a question, throw it at the person that you want to answer the question. Did I get everybody? Okay, come on. Yes.
Mr. Uslan?
Uslan.
Hi. As first of all, big fan. My question. Going back to 1980, when the movie first came back at BDs, did you ever feel that it is going?
My love for Batman, my love for comic books, my love for superheroes is exactly the same passion my dearest friend Greg Hildebrandt had. And Greg's...
Attention, everyone, to Thanks for the Memories panel that tribute to Greg Hildebrandt is
Get a little bit late.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Oh, really?
What the Batman movies has been about for me is exactly the same thing that art has been about for Greg. Even in his 80s, Greg was 8 years old. He was 12 years old. He never lost the child inside him. It came out of him at every moment. He spoke with excitement. He spoke with passion. He loved what he did. He loved working. He loved waking up in the morning. And I think all of us could not possibly be here if we didn't have the passion that Greg did.
Oh,
And that's what binds us. And that's what binds, whether it's Batman or Lord of the Rings or whatever it might be. That is the thing that binds us all together.
Question?
Yeah, I got a question. Problem means I got a question. So I got a lot, but who you point out. So with Transformers, right? How do you came up with names? Like I always All right.
Well, I think to be fair to the crowd here, I think we should reserve Transformers questions. Come over to my table. We can talk. Okay? Because my involvement with Greg was specifically Marvel Masterpieces trading card set in 1994. And so that was a great experience for me. Hopefully it was a great experience for Greg and Tim. I think it was, because they did tremendous work on it. So I'd be happy to talk about that if people here have questions about that.
I do have one question, which is how many cars were there altogether? How fast did they have
There
to
were like
crank
a
them
lot
out?
of them.
158 cards, and it took them 158 cards.
And then how long
It
did it
took
take
them-
them to
You have
do
an
it?
excellent
It
memory.
took them exactly 4 months and 3 weeks.
Wow.
From pencil to paper, 158
As
cards.
editor, I should know all of that.
Why? You were handling
That's why
that?
Gene. That's why Gene is here.
That's why Gene is here. That's why Gene's been here for 45 years plus. Oh, look, they actually heard the announcement.
That's right.
Damn, how do you like that? Those things work. That's so great. Welcome, whoever just walked in the door. If you have a question about my husband, his art, his career, his life, whatever, these are the people to ask the questions. Okay. Yes, Sean.
Out of all 150 pieces that you raised in, which one was your favorite?
Oh,
Oh, good
wow.
question.
I should have really studied before I came here today.
You knew there was going to be a quiz, didn't you?
Which is your favorite child?
My favorite child? Okay, I have lots of children. So I have a lot of Transformers children. I have other characters I worked on. But as far as the Marvel Masterpieces set that they did, it was a while ago. I haven't reviewed the cards lately, but I remember liking a Spider-Man they did. Like a lot of them. There were a lot of them, But here's what I could tell you. Okay, let me digress just a little bit from your question. All right, so when they got involved, I think this part you might find semi-interesting. When they got involved with doing this set, I was thrilled to be able to work with them. I think they had done a couple of chase cards in a previous set, and that kind of introduced them to the world of Marvel. And now, we're going to use them for the entire set of Marvel Masterpieces trading cards, which was a phenomenal idea. So I met with Greg and with Tim, and we talked about the set, and they were going to produce sketches, and I would look at the sketches and approve the sketches, and then they would move on to painting them. And so they did I don't remember exactly which characters. They did a few sketches, and then I got the sketches. And then I got on the phone, and I said, "These are really nice." Now, Hildebrandt sketches are beautiful. They're regal. They're powerful. They weren't quite Marvel. And what I explained to them was, with Marvel has a history of characters just bursting out of the pages. That's what makes Marvel Marvel. That's the special dynamic to the way their artists present the characters. And I think at some point I had already met with them, but I think I met with them again to go over more detail what I was talking about. And I think the reaction I got, perhaps stronger from Tim than from Greg, was, "Who is this punk editor telling us how to draw?" And Greg was much nicer about it, but I think he was just better at hiding his feelings. But anyway, I did some sketches. They redid some sketches. They really got into it. They wanted to draw like a Marvel artist drew. And then they started generating whole new types of sketches that were more in the style that I was hoping that they could acquire and match it and merge it with what they did so well. And it came out great. And we got along wonderfully. And I think they loved the challenge. I think especially, I think Greg really had an enthusiasm for it. So that's my story.
You're absolutely right. I mean, he did. He loved it. He was always a kid. He loved his comics. He's got so many comics in his library. It's not funny. He loved working with you, Bob. So, that was a lot of fun. And yeah, you're right. You had to push him. You had to push him to do what they didn't do. And that was the thing. Whenever you could push Greg and Tim to do what they didn't do, there's that fine line. They'd walk over, like with Michael. Michael came one day and he called me up and he said, "I just made this deal with Tribune Media." And I said, that's nice. And he said, yeah, so I licensed Terry and the Pirates. And, I said, that's nice. And he said, well, let's do it, in the newspapers again. I said, oh, sure. Okay. So we worked out a deal, and I walked in their studio and I said, you guys are doing right in the middle, by the way, of the Marvel masterpieces. I said, you're doing Terry and the Pirates, weekly Sunday, 53 weeks. And Greg threw a painting at me because he was like, you are out of your mind. What is wrong with you? Did he not?
Yes, he did.
Okay. And then what happened?
And then we got to work together on 53 weeks
Yes, we
of a
did.
syndicated newspaper
Yes, we did.
strip.
And they worked 18 hours a day because now they were doing his 158 paintings and his 53 weeks of dailies and Sundays. And they were like, this is not even human. You're not human. How could you do this to me, Gene? And I said, because that's what you want to do. That's all you want to do. Because that's all they ever did was art. And that was fabulous.
Gene, can I add one thing about the Marvel Master?
Anything you want.
Two things, actually. Number one is there is this magnificent coffee table book called The Marvel Art of the Brothers Hildebrandt that reprints all of these paintings and the sketches. That is just phenomenal. You won't want to miss that. Second thing is about your favorite painting. If you remember back then, in all the ads, there was the Captain America piece that was telegraphing to the world about this series. That's the one I wanted. So I wound up mortgaging my car and my firstborn and actually had the chance to buy that Hildebrandt painting, which I have in my office next to a painting by Joe Shuster, the co-creator of Superman, who repainted the cover of Action Comics #1 for me. And I have that, and I have Greg's Captain America.
It's a good piece. It's a really.
What was your address again?
We'll go over after the show.
Question.
Greg's top 3 favorite Lord of the Rings characters?
Okay, so, I think Greg was always worried that if he died before me, that either Star Wars was going on his tombstone or Lord of the Rings was going on his tombstone. And he painted everything, okay? So I promised him I was going to put Peter Cottontail Surprise on his tombstone, animals with clothes. Greg was very, 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 very figure-driven. Okay, and so, and very, very, very much loved women. Greg thought women should rule the world. As far as he was concerned, Congress should be all women, and the vice presidency and the president should be women, and then we would have no more wars, and, intelligent people would be sitting in government. I'm not doing a political thing here. I'm just saying. So when he got a chance with the rings to go with the chicks, that was really important. He loved the women. He loved Galadriel. He loved Arwen. He loved Goldberry because Tolkien didn't have any women in Middle-earth. It was like this many women and this many guys and orcs and ogres and this and that and the other. So if that answers your question, but he loved the whole idea of Middle-earth. He loved going there and in his head playing with it. And he didn't love that Peter Jackson ripped them off when they made the movies. But, that's another whole world. So, yes?
He said, Star Trek, I'll rave on it anyway.
It's all right.
Get out.
What about Star Wars?
Do you have any favorite
Greg was not a Star Wars fan. Okay, I will tell you that right now. He loved the movies, but as he would tell you if he was here, his son was 7 years old when the first movie broke to him. It was a job. They did a job. They were hired to do a job, and they did a goddamn good job of doing that job. And the whole world knows it. You can't not know that image. But it was his son's thing, not his. And yes, did we watch every single Star Wars movie ever made? Yes, we did. Okay. But he wasn't in love with Star Wars. You know, it was a realm that to him was just, it was movies. And that was it. And that was not his world. But even with that, he did over 100 paintings for Lucas. So, you know, again, they did very, very well what they were hired to do. And they believed in everything they did. They did the best they could do with every single job that they had, but they weren't in love with it. So if you go to my website, if you look at spiderwebart.com and you go to like the section on kids stuff where he's painting his Charlie McCarthy puppets that were his puppets that were cracked and worn and really scary. He loved painting his puppets. Okay. If you look at his American Beauty's pinups, he loved painting those women. There was no question about it. He was an 80-year-old guy with naked chicks walking through my house all the time saying, I love what I do for a living. Look at this. And I get paid to do it. You know, so Star Wars was, Star Wars was fine, but it wasn't his thing. It was a kid's thing and not his. He was too old for it when it came out. Question? Yes, Ken.
What was your first interaction like? Personally, or in terms of seeing his work? Personally, when I did a comic for DC called The Last God of Krypton, a Superman story that Greg and Tim painted. So I was actually out at the house one time. I think only once during that, but I came out once, which was probably the first time I met him. But I knew their work from probably the first Tolkien calendar, whenever that came out. That was a big Tolkien.
76.
So I kept track of that stuff. So I think when it came out, I was delighted to see a Tolkien calendar in the first place. And I don't think I had seen any earlier work of theirs. Not that I remember anyway before that. Have they had any book covers out before that or anything like that?
Oh, they had so much stuff out, but
yeah.
I don't think that the name was not out. Wasn't a big deal. I got to tell you how we got Walter. It's a great story how we got Walter. So Joey Cavalieri was the editor in DC. You don't know the story.
No, apparently not.
Okay.
I never know any stories.
Okay. And I don't know who the writer was that they hired. I have no idea, but he was a big name in the industry, and Joey was very excited. And he was like, okay, blah, blah, blah. And whoever he was, he had an ego the size of California, and he writes this thing, and Joey sends it to me, and he says, this is great. And I read it, and I said, yeah, but it's 80% too long, so cut it back. And he was like, what do you mean, Gene, cut it back? And I said, no, you don't understand. They're going to paint this, and then you're going to cover this whole thing with words, and you're not doing that. That's bullshit. I said, so tell them to cut it in half. So you can tell the same story, just cut it in half. And whoever the writer was got so pissed off he quit. And Joey called me up and he said, he quit. I said, who cares? Find me somebody who knows how to write for a painted book, who's really good. Next thing I know, we had Walter. And I said, okay, works for me.
I'm not sure I know how to write for a painted book, but
you did a great job.
But I could write, so that worked out
okay.
okay.
You did a great job.
And I really love doing working with the Hildebrandts. That was really cool for me. So it's like it's probably a generational thing. I remember that I was thrilled when Tom Palmer, who was an inker and an occasional penciler, he and his wife became really good friends of ours. And every so often, the same was true with Greg, especially. I mean, I know Tim, so I knew Greg better. But I remember every so often you're hanging out, you're shooting the breeze, you're having dinner together, whatever, and you just think, I am fucking hanging out with Tom Palmer. Or I am fucking hanging out with Greg Hildebrandt. And it's just this moment where you go, bing, and everything's just right with the world. And it goes back to normal, but really, those are the moments. That was with Greg and Gene. It was just great to be friends with them.
That was the best part.
Yep.
The friends part was the best part. Didn't matter what we could possibly work on together. Once we became friends, that was it. Yeah.
One of my great regrets is that I do a book occasionally. Now it's really on occasion, but called Ragnarok, which is my own version of the Norse myths. And we sell like 12 copies. I mean, it's just not It's not a popular book. I don't get it out enough on a regular basis for people to keep track of it. But I enjoy doing it, and so far I've had people publish it, so I'm okay with that. And in the first year that I did, the first 6 issues I did, which was one arc, took about a year, we had alternate covers. And I got to have friends of mine like Art Adams and Mike Mignola and some other folks Jeff Darrow do covers for me. And then the second round, I talked to Gene and Greg about doing a cover for me. And Greg was all for it. And somewhere in there, the publisher said, we can't really afford to have somebody else do alternate covers. And I was only an idiot in that I didn't think to myself, well, screw it, I'll pay for the cover. Because I should have done that.
You should have asked me.
Well, I know, but I also hate asking favors of.
Yeah, but Greg would have done it in a heartbeat for you.
I know, but I get asked to do favors for people from drawings and even from friends and then people who aren't my friends. And yeah, it's kind of a drag sometimes. So I wouldn't want to be that guy. But looking back, I think, why wasn't I that guy? I just wasn't thinking fast enough. So I missed my chance on that, but I would love to have done it.
Well, he would have booked.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Questions? Yes.
Okay, I have a question.
Oh, hang on.
Sure.
I can't hear.
You're going to have to talk louder.
During the game for 9/11.
You're talking about the tribute art that they painted. How was it?
Yes, I kind of feel about being part of that because so many people in the country don't feel it like we.
Okay, but I'll explain that as quickly as I possibly can. On the morning of September 11th, Greg was walking out of the house to go to his studio with a canvas in his hand for a pinup he was going to start that day. It was the American Beauty, the girl with the hat, and there was a airport behind her with a flying tiger on the runway. Okay, and as he almost got to his car, his son called me and said, "Gene, turn on the TV now. And I screamed, and he came running back in the house. My brother and my mother lived a block and a half on West Street from Tower 1 on the 14th floor. And so we sat there, and I kept trying to call. And I finally got through to my brother, and I was screaming, get out, when Tower 1 fell. And I watched it fall, and I didn't know if they were dead. And by that point, Greg, Tim was there, 2 other artists were there, and we sat there frozen, like the rest of the world. We sat there frozen. About 2 hours just watching it. The second tower fell, and I got up, and I turned off the TV. And they looked at me, and they started screaming, "Jim, what are you doing?" And I said, "Go to work. All of you now, go to the studio, go to work now." And they were like, "What do you mean, go to work? The world we're being attacked." I said, "If we don't work, they win. Now, I want tribute art, and I want it now." And they all left for the studio, and they started sketching. They came back that night really late, and they had all these sketches. What do you want? And I had already made deals with poster companies and whatnot to do get as much out as fast as we could into the market for money that we were going to give. We ended up giving the money to the Rusty Stout Foundation, because 99 cents of every dollar from his foundation goes to the EMS, the families, the EMS, the firefighters, the police who fall in the line of duty. And we pushed really hard. But that tribute art ended up being something really incredible, because we couldn't get into New York for 10 days. And I had all these sketches, and my mother and brother got back into their apartment in downtown. But we had to park 16 blocks away. Okay. And they always posed real people. And so we were walking, we were about halfway down, and we were going through checkpoints with the FBI and the state troopers and this and that, and they had to keep showing our ID and who we were and why we were there. And I looked across West Street, and there was this young police officer. He was standing. It was the most amazing thing, Walter. You would have loved this. In the sun, with the proudest stance I have ever seen in my life. And we walked across the street, and I introduced myself, and I said, "I would like to pose you." right here for one of these. And he said, I have to call my captain. I said, then call him now. So we called him and he said, yeah, sure, go ahead. So we posed Scott Baio right there. He was from Brooklyn and he was on West Street. I said, thank you very much. We ended up posing real cops, real firefighters for right there on the streets. I pulled them out of cars. It didn't matter. I needed it to be authentic. Okay. And the first time they opened up the 9/11 site for the families, I had 300 sign posters because there are 3 different images. So we had 100 of each. And I was carrying 100 and Greg was carrying 200. And there was thousands of people downtown. And there was no way we were going to get those posters in behind those walls that they built. And we were walking in this crowd, and this cop is standing there, and he turns around and he goes, Gene. And I was like, Scott, what are you doing here? And he was like, why are you here? So I told him, he said, come on, I'm getting you in. And he pushed through the crowd, and we got right up to this table, all these cops and FBI and whatever. And standing in front of me was the tallest fireman I've ever seen in my life. And all I saw from the back, he had his helmet, and it said, Chaplain. And Scott tapped him on the shoulder, and he turned around, and he smiled at me. I'm telling you, he had to be close to damn 7 feet tall if he was a dime. And Scott explained who we were and what we did and what we had. And this chaplain rolled open one of these things on a table, rolled it back, smiled, picked up 300 posters and said, I'll give them to the families. Thank you so much. And he walked through those gates, and I'm telling you, to me, it was like heaven had just, something had intervened there. They loved doing that tribute art. They loved it because to them, this is our country. Don't screw with America, So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah. Next, anything? Anybody? So many quiet.
I got no stories like that. I'm done. I think I'm through. Thanks for coming.
Wait, you said you have a question?
Yes, 158
158
paintings.
Yes.
How large were these paintings?
Okay, so
Because Greg worked big sometimes.
yes, well, when I said yes to the 158 paintings and I did the contract, they said I was out of my mind because I did that job with Bill Jemis, who was the president, and we had a 6-month deadline. And so they used to paint they're on board, which is a very hard wood board, composite board. And I had to deal with Serbo lumber. And so I sat down and I said, okay, we need to do a majority about that size. And then we can do some about that size. And then you can pick 6 that are 36 inches tall. That's it. And so I had these templates that I would fax over to Serbo. And I said, okay, I need, you got to cut 8 boards with these. You got to cut 3 boards with these. And then they delivered all the boards, all 158 boards. And then I hired Joe Kubert students to come in and gesso the boards. And for 2 weeks, they were just gessoing, sanding, gessoing, And then I said, okay, now here's the sketches. Start to transfer them. So I paid them to transfer with Greg and Tim. They did all the transferring with the 2 of them, and that was fine. And Greg and Tim said, but we can't make it, Gene. You're out of your mind. Why'd you sign that contract? And I said, you know what? All these years, I'm telling you what it's going to take you. And I was never wrong how long it's going to take them to do a piece of art. I never was wrong on a job. I said, this is the McDonald's School of Comic Art. And they went, what does that mean? And I brought in 8 easels. I said, now, how many of these have blue sky and white puffy clouds? And they were like, okay. And we lined them up. They painted the skies. I said, next, how many nighttime? And they literally just took 4.5 months. Because Bill Jemis called me up one day and said, can we cut that? Can we shave some time off that 6-month deadline? And I said, sure, Bill, what do you need? He said, can I get a month back? I said, yeah, no problem. And they really wanted to kill me. But we made it. We made it. And they had more fun doing that than I think they had in anything else ever. Because they were kids. They were kids. At that point, they were 8, 9, 10 years old. They were going down to Ma's candy store and getting their, whatever, Michael, I don't know, in 1945, what was a comic book in 10 cents? 10 cents, and that's what they were doing. And but it was theirs, I'll tell you one story that you guys will appreciate. The very first painting that they did in their studio was in my office building with my publishing company, was Wolverine. They decided that we're going to start here with Wolverine. And I said, okay, fine. And so they had this blue light, blah, blah. And Greg comes in. They always brought it in and said, what do you think? How's it look? So he comes in my office and he puts this thing on my desk. He says, what do you think? I said, why is he green? And he said, it's blue light on a yellow costume. I said, right, why is he green? He said, I just told you it's blue light on a yellow costume. I said, no. You don't understand. You're a kid and you don't understand. You can't give these people anything but what the costume looks like, because that's what they want. And he was like, you want me to put a white light on every one of these costumes? I said, I do. I don't care what you do with the background light, with the top light, edge light, I don't give a shit. I said, but if the costume is yellow, it goddamn better be yellow. If it's red, I don't want to see burgundy. I said, don't give me blue for black. And he was like, oh. He went back, he repainted it, and 158 paintings had a white light. And then like 12 other lights in each one so that they could get the drama that they wanted. Oh, a little green edge light over here, a little, magenta coming in the back. And it worked. It worked because it was really a success.
Gene, you sound like you're more of a Marvel editor than a lot of Marvel editors.
Maybe, I don't know. I just loved it.
Because of your approach.
Yeah.
Well, what you didn't realize, which was fun, when I started working with the Falco, okay, I said, could you put me on your comp list? And he said, yeah, sure, Gene. We're publishing a lot of books. I said, I don't care. Just get me on your comp list. And I would get this box, I don't know how many titles at that time in 93 that you guys were doing. And I'd get this huge box every month and I'd read every goddamn book. Every book. Every variant, every offshoot, and the X-Men this, and then there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this, and then I'd sit down with Greg and and I'd say, okay, this is what's happening in the universe. And I did that as long as they were doing stuff. And then I gave all the books away. I was like, okay, I'm so done. I'm so done. I'm too old for this. But I knew what was happening. I could sit down and have an intelligent conversation with Gary Stewart, Bill Jemis, Dan Buckley, Tom DeFalco. It didn't matter. It was my job.
What's everyone's favorite piece you did? Does everyone have a favorite piece that Greg?
I do.
Go ahead.
Years ago, the Montclair Art Museum had a comic book exhibition that I curated based on my collection. And it ran for like 6 months. It was the biggest thing that they had, got the most traffic. So I called up Jean, of course, and I said, what can we do that's like spectacular? And she said, I have an idea. Greg painted on this enormous canvas that dropped down across the main wall of the museum. It came down, 2 flights or 3 flights? Yeah. Gigantic. And it was Marvel and DC superheroes. And it was amazing to watch him paint.
24 feet.
Yeah. And people at the museum, the visitors would come and watch him painting there. They did this huge thing, but it was at a point in time, one of those times when Marvel and DC were at war with each other. That has happened from time to time.
From time to time.
So I forget who it was, or if it was both of them. They said, no, we don't give you permission, even though it's for an educational nonprofit art. We don't give you permission. You can't have both Marvel and DC characters
On
together
the same canvas.
on the same canvas. Oh my God!
With
After they
DC.
did that, what? Oh my God! What are we going to do? Gene had the solution. Go ahead, Gene.
And I walked over and I cut the canvas down. Right up the middle. And Greg was like, what are you doing? And I said, Paul Levitz doesn't want his characters and these characters together on the same canvas. But when they hum, we butted it right next to it. So you had no idea that they weren't on the same canvas. And then it was even funny because the Warner Brothers lawyers called me up. They're like, you can't do that. And I said, tell me what I can do.
She put them, they were literally 1 inch apart.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was my favorite piece of art that Greg ever did.
Okay.
For me.
Tom.
That's a really tough question. I'm going to go with that Lord of the Rings painting. I think both Tim and Greg work on that huge one. It's in the house.
Yep.
With all of the characters.
In the fireplace, the unexpected party, or the one?
No, it's the one it's the big battle scene.
Oh, the Siege of Minas Tirith too.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
I don't know quite how to describe it so everybody would know what I was talking about. But they both worked on that one.
Yeah.
I love that one because it's that combination of them working together seamlessly, and it's huge. It's beautiful. So, I mean, if I had to say one, it's just Greg. I'm just so partial to that Spectre cover, but I mean, that's just like because it's the Spectres and the
right.
Yeah, of course. So that huge painting, which I had seen in print before, but never in person. When I saw it standing in front of it, blows you away like you're blown away when you see the first time you see an NCY painting, and it's so big, and you're like, oh my God, I had no idea that it was like that. So I'm going to go with that one.
Okay.
Is there a name for that one?
Siege of Minas Tirith too. That's it.
I'll go with that.
Okay.
Is that orange? Larger red and orange color key?
Yes.
Is that one?
Yeah.
All right, that's mine too. I know they had later work that I'm sure was better drawn, but there's some, also often the stuff you see first is the stuff you get imprinted by.
Yeah.
Like in comic books, I think, man, I love Jack Kirby. I love Jack Kirby from like 1965 because that's the stuff I first came across. And he has earlier work and later work that I love. Actually, later stuff I love perhaps more. But that's one of them. I have two. And the other one, I don't know how to, it might have been The Rough, I think. He had it up at the house at one point for time. That's Weezy's favorite. And that was a dream painting. It was kind of a nightmarish dream.
Which one? The one with
There were
the
beings standing there.
The skin stretch?
No,
The one that I put on Mob Rules? The one that I licensed to Black Sabbath? Yes.
I think that might have been it. And he went back and painted it, a real version, I believe.
Yeah, that was.
But I think it seemed, well, the ones we've seen, I believe the law work I have not seen. I haven't looked at all 148, or 24, whatever it was. 58. I haven't looked at all 158 Marvel cards. But that was one that, of all the work of his I've seen, it seemed the most personal.
Oh, yes.
It spoke mostly from inside him in a way that you didn't normally see to me in the other work, beautiful as it was, and as personal as it would have been because he loved the Lord of the Rings or whatever he loved, Marvel maybe not, but he still loved it, did great work. But that one seemed so personal that it spoke of that, just seeing the artwork. And I thought it was great.
That was his favorite thing that he ever.
Oh, I thought he had good taste.
That's a shame. To pick a painting, to pick one painting, to say that was my favorite, is probably an impossibility, but I have to probably honestly say the last thing he painted before he died was a portrait of me holding my name tune that he bought me a couple of years before he died. It's not finished, but it's my favorite.
I just going to say, I knew that was going to be it.
Yeah,
I knew what you were going to say before you said it.
It's not. So, I mean, I have had the privilege of watching him paint everything for 45 years, but you could take all of it and put it over there and just put that painting from me. And That's right. He also couldn't see my wrinkles, so I don't know. He needed glasses. I don't know what the hell was wrong with him, but that's fine.
Well, actually, I guess my favorite painting I would have said is the one that Walter picked. I loved that painting. It was, just for the very same reasons that it was so very personal and a little bit surprising. It was, it was thoughtful and haunting in a different way than a lot of his paintings were. It was probably the dreamlike quality. But actually, I kind of love the paintings of Jean. She is in so many of these paintings just over the years. And I love those. Oh, it's one over your bed, isn't there?
There's one over the bed of us kissing at our wedding.
Right, I love that painting.
Piece. Yeah.
I mean, I think the personal pieces for me do it.
Oh, yeah.
More than,
I love
the artwork was beautiful, but the personal ones.
You know how all of you, I know, you all have to have a preference. Good guy, bad guy, villains, not villains. I'm a villain chick. I love villains. And so over the years, every year Greg would paint me as a villain. So in the house, I mean, I'm Cruella de Vil, and and I'm Maleficent, and I'm the Highlander. There can be only one. And I've got all these beautiful paintings of me getting ready to kill somebody, and and it's great, and I love all of those. Okay, so yeah, he used to love the paint. He did.
I think we should quit being friends. This just sounds too dangerous.
Sounds too dangerous.
Oh, well, I think the painting that made the most of an impression on me, the biggest impression on me was that classic Star Wars painting from the beginning of Star Wars. It just took me to another place just looking at that picture. And so whatever they were meant to accomplish with it, I think they certainly did, at least to my eyes. That was still my favorite.
Okay.
I will say one thing about the Star Wars painting, it was a lot of fun for me, is that about 3 years ago, Jim Brigman, who's an artist, was doing a comic with Stuart Moore, was writing it. Captain something was a cat book. June is a crazy cat lady.
Ginger.
Yes, she is a crazy cat lady, one of two that we know. And so three. So we did another, she was doing a book, Captain Ginger, which was anthropomorphic cats, space opera. And they asked me if I would do a variant cover for it. My life these days is variant covers. And so I did a variant cover for it. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, I'm going to steal the Star Wars painting. So, space stuff, but it's going to be, so I totally stole it with cats. And I forget who the bad guy was, but there's a big head in the sky. There's little spaceships going up in the arc. So I studied the painting a lot in order to try and get a drawing that would be. And what was really cool about it, my work is almost all black and white. I very rarely do I paint. Once a blue moon. I'm not a great painter. But they had a really good colorist. I do not remember who it was. It wasn't my regular colorist. But they asked for it. I think it was the person who colored the book regularly. And I figured if I'm doing a book for them, God bless them, go for it. And whoever did it nailed the color scheme from that painting. I don't know. I think if you look at it in black and white, some people would recognize it as being from this Star Wars, but I'm not sure everybody would really. Yeah. It's just a drawing. It's
plain color you got.
But boy, in color, it's
you're like, whoa.
Wow, Walter really stole that painting.
Yeah.
So that was great. So that was probably the most I looked at any one piece of Craig. Sorry, at least for over a few days.
Over a few days. What time is it anyway, guys?
3:49.
3:49.
Okay. What? Do I?
I think we're supposed to be out.
I think we're supposed to be out of here.
It's okay.
Before that.
But if nobody's, Dave's back there. We're going to boot us out. Dave will tell
he's
us.
not going to boot us out.
Question. This question is share with you that somewhere ago when Star Wars came out, about a year or two, give or take, there was a dinosaur park, a children's dinosaur park that Assembly Ray worked on.
Yeah.
And as most little kids do about dinosaurs, I kept this book forever and ever. And then I got in the comics and blah, 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 and the cards come out. And I remember thinking, wow, he's cut to a dinosaur book when I was a kid. And then, of course, Greg started appearing at this show.
Yeah.
I bought my dinosaur book.
Oh, did he sign it for you? Oh, that's nice.
Oh, nice.
That's nice. That's he loved doing that. When people came with his old stuff, oh my God, he was like, oh God, I remember this.
That's almost 50
Was that done about the same time as the Star Wars piece?
No. Way
Oh,
before
way
that.
before?
Way before that.
It was like maybe first read or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Way before that.
There's one more thing that hasn't been mentioned. I don't know how many of you or your kids are fans of Disney's The Little Mermaid. That beautiful, beautiful rendition of Ariel with the red hair. That was Greg and Tim. They were the guys who came up with that, designed that, and did the most wonderful Little Mermaid book. And every time you see anything Little Mermaid and you see that image, that was theirs.
There you go. Yes?
Okay, I have a photo of Greg that I took in front of a Frazetta painting. I know he was a big fan of Frazetta.
Yeah.
Who else?
Who else what?
Who else was an influence on her that he loved?
You mean it was breathing? Or dead? I mean sound. Well, you know, I mean, Greg had, and still in his studio, he must have 200 art books that, you know, Peter Bruegel, Dolly, Michelangelo, Raphael, on and on and on and on and on. And it was so interesting because most people really didn't know Greg. Okay, you met him at a show. He was always nice. He was smiling. He was, you know, fun, blah, blah, blah. But he was always had at least 4 to 6 books he was reading at the same time. So in the bathroom that he used mostly in the house, there was, you know, bookshelves, books all over the place, never in order, dear God, and never the same kind of book. And one was a documentary, one was on an artist, one was on war, World War II, whatever, Charlemagne, I don't know what the hell. Okay. And so, you know, it was just, he was all over the place. He was all over the place. And so his whole life was all over. He used to do these things called brain dumps. And he'd be in the middle of a painting or he'd be in the middle of sketching something for the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and a thought would hit him. And he used to say this little trap door would open and it would drop down, and he'd go, oh, shit. And he'd run over to his board and he'd draw something. Okay. Now, when she got sick last year, I thought I had 2 envelopes, 13 by 18 envelopes, hard envelopes, a brain dump. So I figured I had maybe 50. Okay. And I hired somebody to scan everything that's in the house now, which is probably going to take 2 years. And when Kim finally finished brain dumps, 2.5 months later, there are 2,300 brain dumps, just brain dumps. And every one is a different thought. So, you know, living with him was amazing. It was amazing because he could talk about a zillion subjects with knowledge, you know, and so art, he would walk into a museum and go, oh, that's so and that's so and so and that's so and so and that's, oh, and that's Motherwell, and I'm like, why would you even know Motherwell? You know, modern art, why would you even know that? But he made it his business to understand art, artists, the history of it, the brushstrokes of it. So his favorites, Wyatt, Pyle, no question about it. Michelangelo, absolutely. Caravaggio, without a doubt. You know, these were things that he thought were, he always used to say this, without art, music, and literature, the world would be pure chaos, and it could not exist. And he believed that. He really believed. So it was just art. And it was, everyone had something that he liked. Every artist that ever lived, even Picasso, who he absolutely detested, had some things that he liked.
Gene, can I add one thing?
Yes.
Greg and I used to talk about this. When he and Tim were growing up, their life was about the newspaper comics.
Oh, yeah.
So, and especially the Sundays, because back then each one had a full page in color. And Greg and I used to talk. There were 4 comic strip artists that I think influenced him and inspired him the most: Milton Caniff, Alex Raymond, Hal Foster, and Vern Hogarth. Those were the 4 he always talked about.
Yeah, and he knew how they drew, and he knew the line art, and it was amazing. He was a brilliant guy with 6 months of art school, self-taught, just day and night. All he did was art. And I'm reading his autobiography that he started to write in 2003. And night before last, I was reading some of it, and I got to this part where he was talking about when he was 6 years old, and he and Tim were in their room and they were drawing. They were drawing. And then he said, and I thought this was so beautiful, he said, the best part of art I realized when I was a kid was the white paper in front of me. He said, because my father used to bring us home reams of paper, and that's where all the possibility existed. And Tim and I just dove into that empty space, and something came out. And it was just beautiful. It was like, oh my God, because that's all he did, was draw, and then paint, and draw, and paint. It was like it was automatic. At 85, he was still getting out of bed at 6 a.m, having his coffee, and going to work. And he was doing 10 chin-ups and 50 push-ups every morning. So, his life, he used to say, art chose me, I didn't choose it. And that is true. And that's true. So we should stop now, right, Dave? Yeah, okay, so wait, there's one more thing before we stop. Okay, wait, excuse me. We gotta get up and do this. Sorry. No problem. No. You need to sit here. I sit there? All right, sit. Okay. All right, yes, ma'am. So the name of this is Thanks to the Memories that came with Dave and I kind of going back and forth. And
Booze?
no. This is for you too, Charlie. And this is from Greg and I. Turn it upside down.
Turn it upside down.
We'll Buster if we do this.
Yeah, here. Turn it upside down.
Okay. All right.
Holy moly. It's a brick of solid gold. I know.
Us and Melinda.
Oh my God.
So it's from us. He's not here.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Oh, that is a brick of solid gold. Thank you. Oh, look, pull it out so people can see.
Oh, so nice. Oh. I'm afraid to take it out and break it. Basically, it's the 4 of us, me, Wheezy, Gene, and Greg in crystal.
Yeah. And this is the base. It lights up. You don't have to even that here.
Oh,
Thank
it's
you,
so
Sherry.
fabulous.
Holy cow, it's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Gee, wow.
Sorry, guys.
Yes, it was perfect.
Holy cow.
It also weighs
A ton.
Sorry. All right, so I think this is the end of this. Not the end, but it's the end of this.
We'll be using this in our next mystery as the blunt instrument.
And thank you all for having.
Thank you for coming.
Did you see this?
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, great.